Hi, everyone. Thanks for checking out the Safe Travels podcast. My name is Joey. Today, we are at Rocky Mountain National Park, and I had the chance to sit down with Kyle Patterson. Kyle is the park's public affairs officer, and in this episode, we talk all about this iconic national park, from park history to ways visitors recreate, and a whole lot more. Kyle, we are at beautiful Rocky Mountain National Park. You are the public affairs officer here. I know you do a lot more than just public affairs, and you've been here for 2 decades. So what does your role entail, and what does your day-to-day look like at this wonderful park?
I'm so fortunate to be the public affairs officer at Rocky because every day is really different. And it depends on the time of year, it depends on what's going on in the park, but it's really different. So my typical day, if there's such a thing, and my main focus is on community and media relations and just making sure that the public is, getting the information that we can provide, and then hoping that they take that information and it makes their trip to Rocky Mountain National Park more enjoyable. We also deal with a lot of folks that maybe have not visited the park in years or might not ever visit the park, but still have a love affair with this place. So they might visit us virtually. They might, be in a situation where they don't travel anymore, but they have some kind of connection here, or they live in a whole other place and they just want to see the beauty through our website. They want to see webcams so that every morning they experience Rocky even though they can't be here in person. So typical day is sharing the stories of Rocky and my amazing colleagues. And then I dabble in a couple of other things as well. I'm a member of the leadership team here at the park. So that means that sometimes I can get we all joke, other duties as assigned. We are really unique in Rocky as well in that we have an information office that we staff with mainly volunteers 7 days a week. And they're also answering phone calls and emails about the park. So I'm very grateful that we still have that function here, that so many things, become so technical that we actually have, these amazing live human beings that are passionate about this place and want to share their passion with others. So the information office is within my portfolio here. Also, just the whole digital media. So website, social media, the app. And I've got a great colleague who is the digital media lead who takes all of that and helps share our stories as well. And then I also am over the entrance stations and campground operations as well here at Rocky this summer. So a lot of diversity in what I do. So each day can be really, really different.
It's easy to see why you've been here for 23 years, telling the story of this amazing park. I'm sure brings a lot of challenges, but a lot of rewards for you in your career.
It really does. And sometimes people ask me, okay, what's your favorite part of your job? And do you get out a lot, in nature? And I wish that I got out more. But because of just being here for so many years and experiencing so many different aspects of the park, both personally and professionally, I do just have a passion not only for the resource, but for my colleagues. I mean, I think Rocky attracts amazing people not only to visit here, but to work here. So people that are very passionate about the mission and also just passionate about, really protecting this place and providing great experiences for park visitors. I mean, we're all really proud of that when visitors, come and say, can't wait to come back again. Or, it's really important to all of us. There's just this amazing work ethic here at Rocky that I'm really fortunate to be part of.
Because you are a storyteller and you get to work so closely with your colleagues, we're going to have a couple of your colleagues on the podcast after this one, a climbing and wilderness supervisor, and then a large mammal ecologist. Do you get to spend time with them out in the actual field to be able to tell their story and articulate their story better?
Yes, I am able to do that. Of course, never as much as I would like to, though. But, that's sometimes the biggest challenge is we have got so many amazing stories to tell, and we don't have enough hours in the day to tell the stories. I mean, truly, with a place like Rocky that's been around as long as it's been, and the different roles that park staff play in different aspects of it run the gamut. And then throw in other things tied to this amazing place, whether it's just weather or changes or resilience, wildlife, The human aspect of this place. There's just not enough time to tell all the stories, but we have some amazing stories to tell here at Rocky.
This park, it's a special year for it. 110 years it's been a national park. What is some of the larger stories that have taken place over the 110 years and this, the wonderful history of this area?
Yeah. When you think about how much has changed in our country in 110 years, and, we're a pretty young country, but how much has happened in our world in that 110 years. And then over the years, I was fortunate to have been here for part of it. I'm old, but I'm not that old. Haven't been here the whole time. But I was here for the centennial. And you think through not only the park's history, pre-park establishment's history, but the reasons that people indicate that they come here now are the same as why they came here 25 years ago, 50 years ago, 75 years ago. And then what other places would have that same response? And the three reasons that people say they come here are the same, and that's scenic grandeur. So that's the first thing that people say. That's why I come to Rocky. That's why I follow Rocky online. That's why I come to Rocky is scenic grandeur, which surrounds you here. And even if there's a cloudy day, there's scenic beauty up close too, if you look for it. So that to me is amazing. There's all these things that have changed in our world, technology and transportation, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on and on. The scenic beauty still takes people's breath away. I love that. The second reason consistently that people say they come here is watchable wildlife. So that is exciting too, that over our 110-year history, there's still amazing opportunities for watchable wildlife. And that's something that national parks, in particular Rocky Mountain National Park, is that's why we're here, is to provide this amazing recreational opportunity, but to preserve and protect wildlife viewing opportunities and just habitat for wildlife. So that's number two and has consistently been number two over the decades. And then the third is recreational opportunities. So year-round, Rocky Mountain National Park has amazing recreational opportunities, and it also runs the gamut. We have over 350 miles of trails. So hiking is our most popular recreational opportunity. We've got an unbelievable trails crew here that does a fantastic job of maintaining this very robust trail system that park visitors come here and love. Multi-generations, they might have come when they were a kid, and they might be bringing their kids and grandkids here now to experience those same trails. So hiking is probably our most popular recreational opportunity. But then you have all of these other great recreational opportunities just because we're so accessible. So fly fishing, photography is a real big draw here as far as, again, whether it's scenery or wildlife. And then climbing is extremely popular here, as you'll learn later and as you are aware. We also have amazing winter recreational opportunities that continue to grow in popularity, like snowshoeing and backcountry skiing, ice climbing. So it's just this myriad of recreational opportunities 12 months out of the year that people come here for that are oftentimes very accessible as well.
For somebody who has consistently been in this park for 23 years, are those three reasons still ring true in your mind of why you love this place?
Absolutely. And in fact, sometimes I really have to, I might take it for granted, that I am so fortunate and grateful that I get to see serendipitous wildlife viewing opportunities. I still go crazy when I see wildlife. I really try not to take it for granted. Like this time of year when elk in particular are starting to have their calves, just that whole aspect that people come from all over the world in the United States to see. I really try not to take it for granted, when I see it, and to be able to see that through other people's eyes, like for the first time, or to be with somebody when they drive over Trail Ridge Road for the first time and they see what it's like, the habitat and the tundra above 11,500 feet in Rocky. It's so still exciting to me at this point to be able to look at it through somebody else's eyes and be like, oh my gosh, I'd see this, or I'm up there when the snowplow operators are up there. And I'm like, this is so amazing what they do. I really try not to take it for granted. And even after this many years, I'm kind of a goofball. I still just really, really love every aspect of that. And then the diversity of what it's like to be here 12 months out of the year is also really, really cool. So it can be a very extreme place, certainly during times of, winter where we get a lot of snow and a lot of wind. But to me, that's also kind of part of why I love it is the extreme, aspects of it. And again, to be able to very rarely see certain species of wildlife too. I love that. I love that in my time here, I've only seen one mountain lion. And I've been lots of places where I could have seen mountain lion. I see sign of mountain lion, but I've only seen, I've only had an experience where I viewed it with my own eyes. Once now, recently twice. And so I think that, that whole concept of knowing that mountain lions live in Rocky Mountain National Park, but they're doing what mountain lions do and should be doing, where they're not around humans, but they're here. And we know they're here. We see sign of them. That to me is also like the way it should be. And really cool. Same thing with the bears. I've seen very few bears, which is the way it also should be. If you were seeing a lot of bears, that would not necessarily be a good thing in Rocky because they should be, timid and not want to be around humans. But anytime I have seen a bear sighting, it's as exciting to me the first time as the last time I saw it.
I bet. And I'm guessing the mountain lion's seen you more than twice.
I have no doubt. Not only here, but in other places that I have recreated. Yeah, I've come across some very fresh scat, where you're like, you stand and like you just said, Joey, where you're like, hair gets up on the back here. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure it's looking at me right now. So let's all make good decisions and, change our course here.
You talk about the extreme environments that are here in Rocky Mountain. It's one of the things I love too, because right now where we're sitting, it's calm. The wind's not real strong, but right behind us is Long's Peak. And there's some clouds right above it right now that I'm sure are wreaking havoc on that peak. So it's neat to look around in this landscape and know that where you're sitting, maybe, several thousand, feet away, but also feet in the air is a much different environment and landscape.
Absolutely. And that is another just like amazing draw of this place. And when you're here a lot, you see it frequently where you're looking at, especially with the weather patterns here and the whole concept of mountains creating their own weather happens here almost every day, where you literally will have a forecast, maybe in another place of the park, but there's also another thing that's happening weather-wise somewhere else in the park, just based on elevation. That's another thing that's amazing because you have this diversity in elevation, and as a result of that, in vegetation and wildlife habitat, in weather and experiences, just like right now where we're at. We're at about 7,800 feet. And as you just mentioned, just climb up 3,000 feet and you will be in snow in the trough at Long's Peak, which you'll learn all about with my colleague, but, up to mid-thigh where you're post-holing if you don't have the right gear to keep you on top of the snow. So that's exciting and a wonderful way you can experience a wilderness area. But it's also, something that you need to be mindful of and plan ahead for as well. But yeah, certainly the weather is a pretty amazing part of being at Rocky Mountain National Park and can vary greatly depending upon even the day or the hour.
As a native Coloradan, you have to be extremely proud of what you've and your staff have been able to accomplish here at Rocky Mountain. Do you take extra pride in protecting and preserving this place, with this being your home state and Colorado being, arguably the mecca for recreation and exploring, maybe in the United States? So do you take pride in what the park's been able to accomplish, knowing that all these people flock to the state to explore?
Yes, absolutely. Now, I cannot claim Colorado native status, though. My family moved here when I was a year and a half. So almost.
I think your grandfather did. Okay, I think you're okay.
Very good. So I am, very proud of my home state, and I'm very grateful with national park opportunities to be able to have been at Rocky for this long. I feel like, my home state national park. And I am proud of what we've accomplished here at Rocky, because so much has, even though as we were talking about, so much has stayed the same in our 110-year history and how people have enjoyed this area, and maybe their footwear has changed over the years, or maybe we're not hiking in skirts like we were, 100 years ago. But, certainly the equipment and gear has changed. But the whole concept of wanting to enjoy and come to Rocky and what it provides people as far as just respite and, peace and nature, as we talked about, just what all has happened in our history as a country. And you think about this park being here for people to find respite during, wars. Talked to people who came here as an escape during 9/11, that they felt like they needed to detach from what was happening. And they came here to find that respite and peace and solace. Same with during COVID, so you think about just what a place like Rocky Mountain National Park represents to people from Colorado and all over the United States and world to come here, and we're all then on equal footing when we can enjoy this place and it can provide that to us, and then we can give back to that. That's a really special thing, that I feel really grateful to be a part of. And in my time here, there's been a lot of changes in our visitation patterns as well. And that's something that we've had to try to, tackle and address. And that's been, really tough to look to see how we can address some of these challenges and find opportunities so that we can just keep taking care of this place. Because, as those that, are passionate and follow the national parks like yourself, very knowledgeable about the mission of that balancing act of preserving and protecting for all of us to enjoy it now, and then making sure to the best of our ability that we're doing that for those that come, decades later and behind us, just like, the folks 110 years ago that were like, we think we should set this amazing place aside because we want to preserve the Southern Rockies ecosystem, particularly, tundra, land above the trees. And so that they had that foresight and wherewithal to do that, that we all now can benefit from is pretty huge, that they were thinking about that. And then all of the challenges that have come, with setting aside a place like this, what that looked like. But I think that a lot of us are up to that challenge and, are very rewarded when we can continue to balance that.
There's a lot of things that you just said that I love. One of the first things that you said that I think is a great reminder, especially in Colorado, because there's this culture of summiting peaks, especially for teens, which Long's Peak is behind us. And sometimes I think we go to the national parks, we're all about, I have to hit this trail, I have to climb this peak, I have to explore this area. But you just talked about people finding reprieve in these areas. And I think that's, maybe an underrated thing that we think about when we talk about these natural places is what it can do to our mental health when we're in these spaces of natural solitude and we're able to, think about the world in a natural space. I think that's a really special thing. And you certainly get a lot of that here in this park.
You really do. And I love that actually, I think many of us that have enjoyed public lands, and some of us came late into that, like maybe we didn't grow up with that. But we've come to connect with that later in life, or some of us were fortunate enough that, that for whatever reason that was part of, family experiences or where friends went. But a place like Rocky demonstrates what a lot of research is showing now, which I think many of us probably already were well aware before research, showed that sounds like sounds of nature. I don't know if we can hear this bird behind us, but I can't see it, but I can hear it. Actually brings your blood pressure, down. I mean, there's continued research that even looking at photographs of nature helps bring, peace. And then being actually within it. And it doesn't have to be necessarily a summit hike. It can be a, stroll around a lake. It can be pulling over and sitting in a picnic area. It can be coming in and looking at the, dark skies or the night skies here. For instance, we have people that say they've never seen the Milky Way. ever because of where they live or where they grew up, and found this, profound peace or connection from seeing the Milky Way, from going to one of our night skies programs, hearing from some of our rangers, and, just talking about just kind of a world outside of our own world. And so people have definitely, aha moments here, or just moving moments, or whether they're just, experiencing the whole concept of, Rocky is the headwaters for a lot of major rivers. So just thinking through the connections of wherever they live and thinking through, okay, the Continental Divide runs through Rocky Mountain National Park. The water on the west side goes to the Pacific Ocean, which is where, so-and-so lives. And the east side goes to the Atlantic Ocean, where so-and-so lives. And so, I think that whole connectedness to nature, tying all of that together, kind of finding the commonalities of like, oh yeah, water is really important. We all absolutely have to have water. Where does that come from? Are things that really are things that if you let yourself go a little bit deeper when you go to national parks like Rocky, you'll definitely see. And I think sometimes you can have profound moments or changes. The other thing that I think is so amazing that, you hear from people at Rocky is they come here either multi-generationally, they've come here for decades. They've come here for, we heard amazing stories during our centennial that people were like, I've come here every year for like 75 years. And you're like, what? And you love to hear their stories. But there might be people that are experiencing it for the first time, and it's fun to watch it through both of those sets of eyes. Certainly the connection that people feel here can either be something like the summit of Long's Peak, like that's what their goal is, or it can be something like really looking at the micro or macro part of it, where you see people that are just enamored with looking at flowers on the tundra. And in order to do that, you really have to instead of looking at a distant view, you have to go down really like what's up close to you. And then usually when you start looking at that, then you're like, oh, okay, I see I see an ant, I see a bee. I see it. So that's what's so cool about Rocky is just like up close and distance experiences.
I completely agree. One of the great things about Rocky too, that makes it even more special, is the proximity to such an urban environment, for it to feel like such a secluded, natural, special place. But also it gives the accessibility from these urban environments like Denver. It's about an hour away or so. But Estes Park is right here and widely regarded as one of the best gateway towns outside of a national park. It's a special area to recreate. What do those cities provide in terms of accessibility and inviting people who might not have ever experienced a national park? Do you hear this is a lot of people's first park they come to?
We are a very accessible place at Rocky Mountain National Park. And the other aspect of that you just hit on is the amenities that are nearby are fantastic. And we've got this wonderful symbiotic relationship with our communities that are nearby of Estes Park and Grand Lake, and even beyond that. But Estes Park and Grand Lake are right on, the doorstep of the park. And for people to be able to have a variety of different experiences, whether they're staying really close to the park for a day or a week, being able to have those kind of amenities or jumping off points does make it more accessible. And about 30% of our visitors are from Colorado that come to Rocky. So they might just be coming up for the day, or they might be in a different part of the state and deciding that they want to stay here for a little bit longer. And then you have, again, then it broadens out from there as far as people that are coming here. But it is a definite draw and attraction for people to come to Rocky to be like, wow, so I could be getting off an airplane at Denver International Airport, and I can be at 11,500 feet in like 2.5 hours, 3 hours. That is an amazing accessibility. Sometimes it gets people in trouble, which we could talk about as well, as far as, sometimes that's too easy to get to that elevation. But, it's certainly when somebody is looking at a map or planning their travels, it's like, wow, I could experience everything that the Southern Rockies has to offer as far as, all the things that we've been talking about. And I can get to it, pretty easily and pretty quickly. And then I can go have a nice meal, or I can pick up a picnic lunch and come in, get my other basic needs met pretty well. Rocky is like perfect for that.
It certainly is. You mentioned a couple of the special areas of this park that folks like to recreate around. What are some of the iconic areas when you're in the park that people either drive through or stop at, or maybe there's a trail that people, flock to? But what are those special areas in the park?
Yeah. So we've got lots of special areas. And that's what's also great about Rocky is depending on when you're like looking at a map of the park, it can be very different depending on whether you're on the west side of the park or the east side of the park as far as just the vegetation. And possibly the wildlife that you see, but for the most part, the wildlife is going to be pretty consistent, particularly with ungulates on both sides of the park. Trail Ridge Road is the highest continuous paved road in the United States. And when you think about the history of the park and the infrastructure of the park, that road was completed in 1932. So when you think about, again, not taking things for granted or really try to step back in time, when you go on that road and you think about the engineers and the landscape architects that built that road as a road to go over the Continental Divide for all of us to experience to this day, and to be able to do it in a way that tries to protect the tundra as much as possible because the tundra is so extremely fragile. And so to be able to see that anywhere else, probably in the United States or the world, would be a lot more difficult to get to that kind of terrain and habitat. And so Trail Ridge Road is open because it is the highest continuous paved road in the United States and crests out at 12,183 feet. It's only open end of May, weather and resources permitting, through mid-October. So if someone is coming during that time frame, that should be something that they check off. Now, it does have some heights involved, right? Highest continuous paved road is going to have some heights. So some people need to also be thinking through that. There's, not guardrails. There's, you really have to be comfortable with driving in that terrain. And you also have to be prepared because the weather can change rapidly, as we've talked about. But that's certainly one of the best things that you should do because you get top of the world views, like Sound of Music, arms out to the side, going in circles, no matter where you look. It's amazing. Plus, sometimes you can be above the clouds or in the clouds up there. And so the views are amazing. Plus, you can see all different mountain ranges that are not only within the park, but outside the park. So you can see on a clear days, you can see, into Wyoming, to the Snowy Mountains, and you can also see like the Gore Range and other places in Colorado. So it's amazing. So certainly that would be a place. The Bear Lake Road corridor is the most popular area of Rocky Mountain National Park because it has an amazing hiking trail infrastructure in place. And a lot of it just has to do with geology, topography, where the canyons come in. And so you have a lot of glacial lakes in those areas. So they're popular destinations. So if coming to the Bear Lake Road area, certainly recommend it because of the hiking opportunities and the destinations and waterfalls. That's an area that, because it is really popular, you just need to really plan ahead if you're going into the Bear Lake Road corridor and think through like access points and where you want to go. But it's amazing as far as the hiking opportunities, but there's also amazing hike opportunities in other aspects of the park as well. The Wild Basin area has a number of great destinations and hikes too, that you're going right along rivers and streams and looking at waterfalls and getting up to high alpine lakes. And then there's a variety of other locations on the west side of the park, which is the headwaters of the Colorado River, where you're experiencing that terrain. And again, thinking through, wow, so this is the Colorado River. This is what has created some amazing things, downstream as well. And so there's this great diversity throughout the park. So those are some of the amazing places. Another great experience in the park is driving up Old Fall River Road. That is the first historic dirt road that took you over the park. It was actually completed in right around 1913, so before the park was established. And so that's an amazing history part of the park. But that even has a shorter window that's open. That's usually July through early October.
Those are some great tips. And you're right about the Colorado River, to go there and marvel at the fact that downstream it's, carving canyon lands all the way down into the Grand Canyon. That's pretty special to be able to witness that at the headwaters here at Rocky Mountain. You alluded to it a little bit at the Bear Lake Corridor. One of the things the park is proud of and being at the forefront of is timed entry. Mm-hmm. And I know this certainly can spark conversation amongst visitors that want to kind of come into the park and experience Bear Lake, but then might not know about timed entry and be shocked by that. What is timed entry? What's the purpose of it? And of course, what are the results that you've seen from this program?
Great. So timed entry is a perfect example of really needing to look at visitor management, thinking through how we move visitors, how we can help visitors have a more positive experience in the park, how we can address a lot of different things tied to our increase in visitation. So some of the things that we've talked about is just, our ease of accessibility, and that even though we are an amazing wilderness park with 95% of Rocky designated as wilderness, that we are at the doorstep of a very large and growing population along the Front Range of Colorado and then beyond. And so we have seen a dramatic increase in our visitation as a result of that. So from 2012 to 2019, as an example, we saw a 44% increase in our visitation in those years. And so we started seeing some significant impacts as a result of that increase in visitation. It's a good problem to have, and that people are loving their public lands. Rocky is not the only national park or public land area that is experiencing this level of growth. And so many public land managers are looking through, how can we balance the preserving and protecting with visitor use? And so starting in 2016, we were at a point where we were having to literally stop access to certain parts of the park. In the Bear Lake Road corridor in particular, Alpine Visitor Center, which is our highest visitor center in the National Park Service, and it's located along Trail Ridge Road, where you would have just mass congestion and crowding. And as a result of that, a lot of heartache and ramifications tied to that. We would have visitor-to-visitor conflict over roads, traffic, parking areas. We'd have visitor to park staff or volunteer conflicts because people were just frustrated that they had been in long lines leading all the way up here in our gateway communities. And then the first person they saw was one of our colleagues in the entrance station and just let them have it because of the lines that they had experienced. So in 2016, we started really a kind of a stopgap measure in our most congested areas where we would just turn people away. And that was really hard. We are a very welcoming national park. We want people to have an amazing experience. But we were starting to see major impacts in 4 areas. Visitor experience. We were hearing from visitors that said, I'm not coming back. That was a miserable experience, or I thought I could get up there. And now you're telling me you don't know when I can get up there. I only have this many hours. Visitor and staff safety. I always said we were having conflict. We were having so much crowding along the roadways that it was delaying our emergency response. And we're one of the busiest search and rescue parks in the country. We usually are in the 3rd. Along with that, we have the things that you would expect for recreating for search and rescue, but we also have a lot of cardiac emergencies. So you have people that are coming to this elevation that either know that they have a pre-existing health condition or they don't know that, and the elevation triggers it. And so we have to get to places very quickly when it comes to cardiac emergencies, as you can imagine. It was actually delaying our response because of trying to weave in and out of the crowding. So we're we have to look at this differently. Resource protection. The overall concept of, I can't find a parking space here, so I'm just going to park here, which may be on tundra. which I might have a hot car and now I'm in tall grasses. Okay, now there's so many people that are here that are approaching this wildlife. If all these people are approaching wildlife, then it must be okay, and I'm going to approach wildlife. So just the whole concept of how we take care of the resource. And then our operational capacity and infrastructure. Like, we are a park that's been around for 110 years. We have an infrastructure that is old, and we're trying to plug away at fixing what we have. So the concept of building more is not feasible for us because we're trying to take care of what we do have. So it's like, what can even the vault toilets take with this level of visitation? Like, literally, what can the doors take on vault toilets as things just continue to fall apart? So that was our reality behind the scene. So we're like, okay, how do we address this with still giving, visitors an amazing experience at their national park? So for 3 years, from 2016 to 2019, we basically tried to just do a stopgap measure where we're like, okay, let's just focus on the most congested areas, which is pretty easy. Bear Lake Road Corridor, Alpine Visitor Center, and Wild Basin. Bear Lake Road is basically a dead-end road. Wild Basin is a dead-end road. Alpine Visitor Center, 2 roads drop into Alpine Visitor Center. And so we would just turn people away, which was tough for our, welcoming visitors when you're like, there's no room. It's congested, and we really don't know when when there's going to be parking available. We already have a very robust shuttle system in the Bear Lake Road Corridor, and we've had that since the 70s. So we're already using shuttles as a tool, which is a great tool, but we have found in Rocky that it can't be the only tool. It's good to have a mix of vehicle access as well as shuttle access. And so also a concern is a place like Wild Basin, which is a dead-end road, is in a narrow road, is all it takes is one person parking poorly, and you could literally block egress if there is an emergency like a fire. So that is very terrifying when you're thinking about what that tragedy could be if people are not able to exit out of a place like, Wild Basin. So we did that for 3 years, knowing that what we were doing is just like almost like a glove where you're starting to just like squeeze this one, squeeze this finger, and you're just pushing the use into other areas of the park. And that's exactly what happened. So as we turned people away from Bear Lake Road, Alpine Visitor Center, Wild Basin, then any trailhead or parking area outside of that area just got creamed. And so in a very short amount of time, we saw additional denuded vegetation from people parking on that area. And we could go on and on about, the resource impacts when that happens. It's very, it trickles down and can happen very fast as far as habitat. And so, we were seeing an increase in human waste in our wilderness and backcountry. So all of these, things that were happening. And we realized that we needed to look at it more holistically rather than just continuing to just squeeze these certain areas. We needed to pull it back and say, what can we do? Because we've got amazing data in Rocky that showed these major surges. And probably most of us could look at when we go on vacation and say, when do we usually get to a place? And then when do we usually leave a place? Our data depicted just that. From 9 basically to 3. We would have this huge upsurge, and that would be when we would have problems and issues and challenges. And so we were like, if there's a way we could just spread use out throughout the park and throughout the day, not necessarily make our visitation numbers plummet, because we know we're a national park. We know that it's really critical that people come and enjoy their national park. But if we could just get people to spread out their use. And we tried communicating it for a decade. Hike early, hike late, try this area, try this area. But as our visitation just kept going up and up, again, an amazing thing. People want to enjoy their public lands. But it wasn't enough. We had to think through some management plans to do that. And so in 2020, the park was closed just like so many places were closed during COVID. But we were already going on this path prior to COVID that we needed to do something. And so when we reopened the park, it was really important that we did not have crowding, congestion for other reasons. And so we very quickly said if there was a way that we could just get people to spread their use out. And that is when we started working with our partners, started working in a timed entry reservation system. There were a couple of other national parks that had done it specifically for a specific destination. But this was going to be, the first for our park to do it park-wide. And so that's when we started timed entry reservations, 2-hour windows where people can come in during those 2-hour windows, stay as long as they would like. And then we've adapted it and looked at it and changed it. And we realized that the first year we did it park-wide, same time frames. And then we realized, as we knew, Joey, that Bear Lake Road Corridor was a different beast. It's almost like its own national park. And so we had to look at that very differently. And so we were like, well, we have to extend the time that you need a timed entry reservation for Bear Lake Road Corridor because the parking lots were filling before 6 a.m. So we were like, we have to extend that time period there. But we think for the rest of the park, which is the majority of the park, we can do a timed entry reservation for just 5 hours to encourage that spreading use out. And timed entry has been successful at spreading use out throughout the park and throughout the day. This will be our 6th year doing timed entry. Each year, as you can imagine, more and more people are getting used to it. There's definitely, understandably, the hardest part of it is that it has impacted people's spontaneous visits to the park. And so we absolutely understand that. And we hope that because the rest of the park is 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., that somebody could come into the park, most of the park, before 9 or after 2 if they didn't know about the timed entry or if they just found out, I can get to the park today. And then the 5 a.m. to 6 p.m., certainly is a large part of time for the Bear Lake Road Corridor, but that is the time we have to have in place in order to spread out the use in that location. So we've dabbled in a lot over those years, and we're seeing and we're hearing, although some people are, upset because it impacts their particular visit or their spontaneity, we are hearing from a lot of visitors that have said, oh my gosh, I have been going over Trail Ridge Road for the last 10 years and have not been able to find a parking space in a established spot. And I was able to this summer for the first time. And so it's either people hated timed entry, but now love timed entry because they've experienced, or they love timed entry and that it's given them, their national park experience that they're looking for. But we're still learning and we're still adapting. But it was a hard road, and it will continue to be a hard road. But we really hope that it's, addressing some of the things that we have needed to continue to tackle and will continue to tackle.
I think that was a great explanation, and certainly for people that might be frustrated, hopefully this eases some of that frustration and allows you to have some more patience with the parks as you develop this. And like anything, invention sometimes is caused by a necessity, which in the case of Rocky Mountain was certainly necessary for that to be enacted here. As folks might hear on the mic, certainly see on the camera, and we talked about earlier on the podcast, weather can change here pretty quickly.
Yes, it can.
And the temperature considerably dropped, and there's some rain coming around us.
Exactly. If my hands are turning blue, we know why.
But I do want to talk, quickly, and in the upcoming episode, we're going to talk a lot about search and rescue, safety.
Fantastic.
But what are some of those, prominent park messages that you want to get out about safety? Especially when it comes to wildlife and having patience as a visitor. What are those, notes that you want to make sure visitors have before they come here?
This is great. And, cue the weather, Joey. This is like a perfect segue, right, into this conversation. So Rocky Mountain National Park, as we talked about, has this, amazing diversity of experiences that can change greatly depending on what elevation you're at, what time of year you're here. Sometimes it can lull you in because there are amazing amenities and, you're so close to civilization and a controlled environment. Certainly, if I depart into this amazing wilderness, is that going to be a controlled environment as well? And sometimes I think it lulls all of us into being like, oh yeah, I just have all this right at my doorstep and this is a controlled environment as well. And it's not. And so the best thing that people can do is get that into their headspace that I am going into a place where most people have an amazing, safe time in Rocky. We have over 4 million visitors in the park. Most of those 4 million visitors will have a safe, amazing time. Many of those visitors might have near-miss situations where they're like, whoa, that could have been a different outcome, but because I was prepared with this, this, and this, I had waterproof gear so that when the rainstorm moved through, I could, protect myself and not get cold and wet, which then led to this, and this. And it doesn't take, expensive gear to have with you or equipment. It just has, you just need to be thinking through kind of that preparedness of, okay, I'm going this many miles in, I'm going this many miles in. What might the weather forecast be where I'm going? So not what it's at Denver International Airport, not what it's like in, Denver, not what it's like in Grand Junction. What is it going to be at the destination that I'm at? And of all times in our life, we have amazing resources at our fingertips. We are able to see weather patterns, or we're able to call the park's information office and say, hey, what's the weather forecast going to be? We can stop at a visitor center. So planning ahead as to really knowing where you're going, what your destination is, and what the weather forecast is going to be, and then being prepared for that weather forecast is really, really important. Also, depending upon when type of year you go, footwear is really important. So again, not necessarily that you have, state-of-the-art hiking boots. It's just that you've got good footwear for where you're going. Ankle support, or if you're here during the wintertime, having maybe traction devices on the bottom of your boots so that if you do hit ice, you're familiar with that. It definitely, a place like Rocky, because we're talking about the extremes, you'll understandably see people that are like, ooh, I want to go up higher in elevation to get, cool. And they might just have a t-shirt or, cotton hoodie. And then if they get wet, as we just experienced, how quickly the temperature dropped. So if you're really wet, and the temperature drops, then now we got sunshine.
Yeah,
Cue the
great.
Sunshine. And we're good because we're not wet. But if we were wet right now in a situation, that would be rough. So I think understanding that this is very typical and thinking through your destination. If you're on Trail Ridge Road and you're near your car, well, then that's fine. But if you're summiting and you're miles away from your car and you run into a severe thunderstorm where there's lightning or hail, something like that, it can totally, obviously flip the switch on how you do. Sometimes we get a lot of SAR calls, search and rescue calls, right after a storm comes through, because sometimes people are running on slick rocks. And so whereas if you've got something that can keep you warm and dry, just kind of, if you're in a safe place and you're not worried about lightning, just kind of hang tight, because storms will move through quickly, as we just saw. And so just hey, hunker down, have something that keeps you dry, and then walk out when you're not, running on slick rock. So those are some of the things, just, planning ahead, knowing what the weather forecast is. If you know what the weather forecast is, then you make good decisions about what you bring with you in your pack. think the other thing is too that I'd like to, take this opportunity to share is we often get asked, like, should I hike by myself? Should I do something by myself? And that sometimes is the way people experience and enjoy their public lands. We're not all, sometimes we might prefer to experience a place with friends or family, or we might say, no, I want to experience this place like with just, complete solitude and solace, or yeah, I really wanted to experience this with friends or family, but I don't have friends or family that are interested in the same thing that I do, or my friend, something happened and they're not able to join me for this trip. So when you recreate in the park by yourself, the level of preparedness needs to go up. If you're wanting to do that, then you have to realize that if something does happen that you weren't planning on, that you need to be doubly prepared to be able to handle it alone. And most importantly, that you've told somebody where you are and what you're planning on doing, and you don't deviate from that, which is sometimes really hard. You have an idea that I want to do this trail, then you've told whomever your responsible buddy is, if you don't hear from me by such and such time, this is where I was going to be, and this is what I've got to do. And so being able to stick to your plan so that even if you get here and you're like, oh, I just heard that this is maybe a trail I want to go to, but now I can't get a hold of anybody to tell them, stick with your plan so that if something, horrible does happen, that we're able to kind of have an idea of somebody calls and says, hey, I haven't heard from my friend. They were going to go on this place. We go there, we find a car at the trailhead, and then we narrow down. Oftentimes we don't have that information. And so that is when it becomes really dicey if somebody is recreating by themselves. So if somebody is comfortable recreating by themselves, just make sure that you are triply prepared if something bad is to happen, that you can take care of yourself and that somebody knows where you are.
That's great advice. One thing I do want to touch on when it comes to rules and safety is we've talked in depth about how busy this park can be and how crowded the roads can get. I think it's important for people who visit a wildlife park like Rocky Mountain is. There's a distinction between a national park and a zoo. And when you're driving on the roads, there's not necessarily pull-offs on the side of the road, but people make pull-offs to go out and, chase down an elk and get a photo up close. How would you discourage that? Why would you discourage people from creating their own routes on the side of the road and going after wildlife?
Great. Sometimes with our increase in visitation, we're asked, are people just behaving more poorly than they have in the past? And I really don't think that's the case. I think just with more people, you have a larger percent, you have the same percentage, but you're seeing it more because you have more people that are doing it. There's people that don't know how to behave and there's people that don't care. And so the people that maybe are in this category that we're talking about might be a mix of both. Well, I'm seeing somebody else approach this wildlife, so that must be fine. I think that this is when it's best just to think through and step back and say, how do I want to experience this for not only myself, but for others that are watching? If people are approaching wildlife, then it's messing up other people's experience that said, oh man, I was wanting to kind of experience wildlife from a distance with the scenery behind, and now there's this person approaching wildlife. People ask us, well, how close can I get? And we always really try to say, don't ask how close you can get, ask how far you should stay back. Well, I kept going toward this wildlife and it wasn't reacting to me, so I thought I could just keep getting closer. And it's like, no, don't let your litmus test be, I'm going to keep going to this fill in the blank, elk, deer, moose, bear, bobcat, and it wasn't reacting to me. So I was just going to keep getting closer and closer and closer. Sometimes people with smartphones, think that they're the zoom. So they're just going to keep going closer. You do have a zoom capability. So just, thinking through that aspect of being respectful, not only for the wildlife, but for those around you, also people have a tendency to chase off wildlife. So then here you come along 15 minutes later and you don't get that same experience because somebody came before you, got too close to wildlife, and the wildlife, took off. Wildlife here at Rocky are, depending on the wildlife, can be used to human beings, but that shouldn't give us permission to get closer. Some wildlife are more skittish. Bighorn sheep that we have in the park maybe, react differently than elk. And then also it depends on the time of year. So right now it's spring. And so you have very aggressive cow elk, moose, and mule deer that are very, very protective of their young, as are bears. And so you don't know what's happening as you move toward wildlife. And this time of year, it's a very good chance that there is a calf bedded down somewhere, and then it becomes a very serious position and situation where now a mother is protecting its young as they should. And then in the fall, we have amazing opportunity to watch the elk rut or elk mating behavior, which then you have very, very aggressive bull elk during their mating rituals. And so we have a variety of volunteer groups that help visitors make wise decisions about how close they should be getting to wildlife. And so, again, it's a situation, I think, that we can come full circle that Rocky Mountain National Park is not a controlled environment. It's an amazing place that you can have a great, safe experience, life-changing experiences if you haven't seen some of this wildlife in their natural habitat. But our actions do make a huge difference as far as not treating this as a controlled environment, making sure that you're planning ahead if you venture even just a mile or more. And then also being respectful of the wildlife, viewing them from afar. And oftentimes you get a way better experience because you see things that you would not have seen if you were close. Sometimes when you go back, you can see the interactions more, and you have like a much more truly amazing experience. There's no need for you to be so close that you're getting, an up close face shot of, an elk. It's much more interesting if you give yourself that space to watch it from a distance. And so I think that that's really important, and it's something that we continue to try to inform and educate visitors about. And sometimes it's hard because, again, sometimes there's groupthink. Well, these people are going closer. It shouldn't be a big deal if I do. And we're just like, just kind of step back and do the right thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And to double down on your point too, I heard a story of a national park in Alaska doing research on grizzly bears, and they actually flew a drone over to a bear that was radio collared and had some other technology with it, and they were able to tell that even though the bear didn't react to the drone being nearby, that the bear's cortisol levels started to skyrocket and be stressed. And so to your point of maybe an elk not reacting to your presence being close, internally, like us humans in certain social settings, they can be stressed, and if you throw them off of the environment that they're eating on or whatever, that could have downstream effects later on in the day, week, months, etc. So I think that's great advice.
So that is a fantastic example, and it changes their migratory habits. It can change things and research has shown it can change migratory. It can change so many different aspects of their actions that we're thinking, oh, it's not bothering them a bit, and it is. Like your great example.
We have been communicating for a couple of months, and it's been such a pleasure to spend time with you and all the wonderful rangers here at Rocky Mountain National Park. And Rocky, not only in Colorado, but in the entire United States, is one of the iconic national parks in the entire country. And so I guess as we begin to wrap this up, I want to give you the floor to encourage people or to tell people why this is iconic, why they should experience it, and why they should experience it, respectfully in all the ways that you had just mentioned.
Yeah. That's your hardest question yet, Joey. Yeah. So I think just to come full circle on what we have been talking about, what is amazing about this place is truly what we just experienced during this time. We had a little of this, we had a little of this. And so I think that the diversity of what Rocky has to offer for 12 months out of the year, the vegetation and wildlife, 12 months out of the year. We have wildlife that migrate through this park that call it home for a couple of months, which is also unbelievable when you think of it being connected to so many different places. We have hummingbirds that come to Rocky this time of year that then travel to, Costa Rica and back. And you're like, how is that even possible for this little hummingbird? So you think of just the diversity of wildlife. And I know you'll be speaking with one of my colleagues to talk about, the importance of riparian areas and wetlands, the biodiversity that the park supports, either for year-round wildlife residents or ones that just spend a little bit with. And so I love that change. The extreme nature of the park, if you're prepared, is unbelievable to experience that. Also, the different times of day, the alpenglow, the light on the mountains during certain times of year. Literally takes your breath away. Just that beauty. And so I think just that it's so different no matter how many times you come, makes it really exciting and fun to experience. Even if you go to the same destination, you might have in the park, you might have a different experience every time you go. And, just the diversity of things you can do here. So it's the diversity of the vegetation, diversity of the wildlife, and just the different things you can do depending upon what time of year you come. And even if you're someone who maybe is not interested in venturing out into the wilderness or hiking, you still can have amazing, experiences with nature, just being, in a pull-off and just looking into the distance. So it's all of those things, or just watching the clouds go through, or watching a thunderstorm move through. Just all of those different experiences you can have at a place like Rocky are amazing and ever-changing.
Is this year an exciting year to come, considering it's year number 110 of the park, and to be able to, celebrate and honor the history of this wonderful place?
Yeah, absolutely it is. Of course, any year is, but I think just, thinking through again, when we talked about the human history, and then the human history way thousands and thousands of years ago before this park was ever established, and you think about all of the humans that have experienced this park and lived in this park and traveled through this park, and followed wildlife for their subsistence in this park. It is amazing to think of just the most recent history, and then just why this place has been critical for people over the years. And 110 years is a special time to think through that this park has been around for this long and continues to provide amazing experiences for people now.
I definitely think that context makes this place somehow even more special. Yeah. But Kyle, thank you for all the work that you do in this incredible national park in your over 2 decades, informing the public and telling these wonderful stories of your colleagues, and of course of the wildlife and the mountains that surround us. And thank you for taking the time to do this podcast.
Absolutely, Joey. Thanks for your interest, and thanks for helping us spread good information. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out this edition of the Safe Travels podcast. I really hope you enjoyed it. Kyle is absolutely incredible, and her love for this national park is so infectious. So if you like this type of content, it'd mean a whole lot to me if you liked, commented, and subscribed. And until next time, safe travels.